Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of
Countdown to Doomsday.
Today, we're diving into the movie that made everyone suddenly want to build a flying metal suit in their garage. We are talking about Iron Man, the first movie that sparked all of this multiversal time travel, whatever you want to call it. Right? Iron Man from 2008 is the first movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And just to give you a breakdown of the show, I will be reading the official synopsis and I will react as we go and give my final verdict at the end. And just to give you some inspiration of what inspired this podcast, I cannot wait for Doomsday. I can't. So I have to do something. I watch every video that's telling me, oh, this is happening, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Magneto, the Beyonder, whatever's happening, I have to do something in the interim as I wait. So here we are, Countdown to Doomsday. These episodes will come out weekly, and I will be covering each movie in chronological order. Chronological to the years they came out. Not chronological starting from Captain America because Captain America was in the 60s and then Captain Marvel. We're not doing that. We going year to year. Just like when I first went with my dad to go see Iron Man in 2008 and we went together and inspired the journey till Endgame where, bro got murked and it was a very sad moment. I was the only person crying in the movie theater. Yeah, we're doing it just like that. Yeah, so like I said, I will read the official synopsis, react as we go along, and give my final verdict at the end. So before we read the official synopsis, I'll just tell you when I saw this movie. Hold up, there's an ambulance going by. As you know, I live in New York. And Spider-Man and Daredevil are fighting crime. So that's what's happening right now when you hear that ambulance siren. So I saw this movie on a matinee Saturday. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. There's usually, it probably still happens. A matinee on Saturday is usually you pay half off of what you usually pay for the movie theater, but specifically on Saturday, they give you like half off when you get 2 movie tickets, or just get, I guess, whatever sum of movie tickets that you're getting. I saw this movie at Linden Boulevard Multiplex Cinemas. I don't know if I got any people from Brooklyn. That cinema does not exist anymore. Shout out to Linden Multiplex, one of the greatest movie theaters to ever exist in life. They had all the game systems on the side with like Time Crisis.
Action!
Greatest, right? The little game with the what is it? You're like on the water and you're like on a little buoy, motorcycle thing, whatever. Great, amazing. One of the greatest movie theaters that ever exist. So sad to see it go. I hope they open it back up and get rid of whatever store they got there. Yeah, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, my dad, he usually worked during the week, so Saturday was always the best day for us to go to the movies. So one Saturday, we went to go see Iron Man in 2008. So now we've arrived to the synopsis. So here we go. And of course, the synopsis that I'm using is from IMDb. Shout out to IMDb. If you guys didn't know, I am on IMDb, but I'm only on one specific movie. It's an indie film called Shredded. Go check it out. It's on Apple TV. It's on Tubi. I believe we're working our way to Netflix. I did some of the music and the score for the movie. That is the only reason I'm on IMDb. Hopefully one day there will be multiple reasons or multiple movies that will link to my name. So yeah, just want to give you, make that plug because I mentioned IMDb. All right, here we are. Playboy and genius Tony Stark, aka Robert Downey Jr., has inherited the defense contractor Stark Industries from his father, the legendary Howard Stark. And to be honest with you, I've never really been a fan of Howard Stark because he kind of I don't know anything about him. They always show him just to be linked to the storyline of Tony Stark, and I feel like we see him in Iron Man 2. We hear about him throughout the other movies, and then we also see him in Endgame, where Tony basically meets up with his dad again and kind of gets closure just talking to his dad, I guess, because they never. Oh yeah, also he was in Civil War, but basically I guess they don't really have a great relationship. Their relationship's kind of rocky, so that's the only time I ever really remember them officially talking or like having a conversation. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of Howard Stark. Just want to put a pause there. Tony was brilliant from the beginning and built his first circuit board when he was 4 years old. His first engine at the age of 6. He graduated from MIT at 17. Howard Stark died in a car accident soon thereafter. Obadiah Stane took over the company till Tony returned to take over at the age of 21. Now, Tony has subsequently unleashed an array of smart weapons that have changed the face of conflict forever. Just want to put a plug. I don't want to talk too much about it because obviously we have other episodes to cover and other movies. But it's funny that they have the synopsis that Howard Stark died in a car accident. But if you've watched Civil War, you understand what actually happened. Not going to spoil it. You guys got to wait till we get to the Civil War episode, which is a wee bit, couple episodes away if we're starting from Iron Man. Next, journalist Christine Everett confronts Tony in Vegas and presents evidence that his company is selling weapons to terrorists and are being used to subjugate native defenseless populations across the globe. I want to pause to indicate that a Stan Lee cameo. Stan Lee cameo. Small segment where when Stan Lee comes into the picture, I will yell, Stan Lee cameo. And I will explain what happened in this Stan Lee cameo. Shout out to Stan Lee. Amazing man. Obviously, you know why he's important in the MCU. Great. In Iron Man, Stan Lee, credited as himself, appears at a gala cavorting with 3 blondes where Tony Stark mistakes him for Hugh Hefner. You know who Hugh Hefner is, I assume. I don't know if he's the CEO of Playboy, but he's basically the leader of Playboy. I don't know, the boss of Playboy. Insert whatever word, the blank of Playboy. Post at it. In the theatrical release of the film, Stark simply greets Lee as Hef and moves on. Another version of the scene was filmed where Stark realizes his mistake, but Lee graciously responds, "That's okay. I get this all the time." In 2008, Stan Lee named this as his favorite cameo appearance to that date. Moving on, shout out to Stan Lee. Tony has sex with Christine. Now, this is 2000's Teen Choice Award winner Leslie Bibb, also credited in Talladega Nights. She is the wife of Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights.
It's a goddamn cougar in the car!
I find that really funny how she also won the Teen Choice Award in 2000. And I don't know. I guess that's classic billionaire behavior or something. Like, just randomly sleeping with different people who worship you. And there's also, side note, I searched up Tony Stark and I searched up this scene, and there was some mention about like the writer basically making Robert Downey Jr. this type of person, trying to push him towards being like a douchebag billionaire. And while I was on Reddit or just like on the internet, I stumbled upon a Reddit post that was basically saying, "Rest in peace to Tony Stark. He died at the short age of 58." Like, obviously, they were talking about the age that he died in Endgame. But I thought that was really funny because, like, in the MCU lore, is there somebody who jumped straight to Reddit after they were snapped back and decided to say, "Rest in peace, Tony Stark at 58, like, thanks for saving us"? All right, I'm a nerd. Moving on. Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow, is Tony's personal assistant. Harold Happy Hogan, Jon Favreau, is Stark's bodyguard and chauffeur. Jarvis, J.A.R.V.I.S. cast as Paul Bettany, is Stark's personal AI system. And as I must say, the amount of time people have made the joke about my name being Jarvis and being connected to the AI is really funny. My whole life has been dedicated to that. I don't know if you can hear my dog. I have let me pause. I have miniature schnauzers, and basically whenever the cops go by or whatever, an ambulance goes by, they start howling. So I don't know if you can hear them. But yes, Jarvis is his personal AI system my whole life.
Oh, Jarvis, Iron Man. Jarvis like Iron Man. No.
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's just at a certain point, like I've heard it a million times. Moving on. Tony is in war-torn Afghanistan with his friend and military liaison, Lieutenant Colonel. Oh, I said Colonel wrong. Could someone tell me how to say, is it Colonel? Do you say it like Colonel? Because it's spelled colonel. Whatever, moving on. James Rhodes, otherwise Terrence Howard, which is the first Rhodes before he's moved to be, what's his name? I forgot his name. Why did I just hear in my head Keanu Reeves? It's not Keanu Reeves. What's this man's name? He plays Rhodes in Iron Man 2. Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle, Keanu Reeves. I don't know the connection. Yes, Lieutenant Colonel, still can't say that, James Rhodes, to demonstrate the new Jericho missile. Rhodes and Tony are very good friends. The Jericho missile incorporates the new repulsor technology. And if you know anything about Iron Man, he has somehow developed repulsor technology, which is basically one of his main weapons when he's Iron Man. Like, hence why he could shoot people and they don't die, because it's like a repulsor beam of energy. Yes, it's repulsor technology and can deliver explosive payloads to multiple targets with a single missile over a relatively large combat area. And I just have to say, I feel like every movie in 2008 had some 80s rock band like as like their theme music. I know with Iron Man, it was AC/DC and Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath actually wrote a song called Iron Man. So I thought that was pretty cool that they used that song to be the main. It wasn't the main song, but it was definitely one of the main songs for the movie. Moving on, Stark is critically wounded in an ambush where he notices that terrorists have access to weapons manufactured by his own company and imprisoned in a cave by the terrorist group, the Ten Rings. If you know anything about the Ten Rings, they obviously make their comeback in Iron Man 3, and then they're subsequently introduced in Shang-Chi. Not Shang-Chi, Shang-Chi. Funniest thing is I can say Shang-Chi perfectly, but I can't say Colonel. There you go. I just said it. Yes, the Ten Rings. We hear about what the Ten Rings are. Obviously, it will be explained later. I'm not going to spoil it. And I have to say, this whole terrorist switch was actually a lot darker than I remember. As a kid, I remember, obviously 9/11 happened. There were a lot of subsequent terrorist attacks. And at that time, in that 2000 to 2010 area, there were a lot of moments where you have George Bush and the weapons of mass destruction. So I believe whoever the writer was, his tone was a lot darker when he was speaking about Tony Stark being kidnapped. I thought that was pretty cool, but also dark at the same time, but also felt very real because that was actually happening in America at that time. Moving on, an electromagnetic powered by a heavy car battery built by fellow captive Yinsen, casted as Sean Toub. I'm not going to say that. Toub. T-O-U-B. Toub. Keeps the shrapnel that wounded Stark from reaching his heart and killing him. Ten Rings leader Raza Farhan Tahir offers Stark freedom in exchange for building a Jericho missile of his own for the group. But Tony and Yinsen agree Raza will not keep his word. Yinsen tells Tony that his weapons in the hands of terrorists is his legacy to the world. Tony and Yinsen use the components from the other missiles, also manufactured by Stark Industries, and extract palladium, a precious metal, from it. Now, I find that funny how, throughout every 5 movies, there's some new precious metal that's discovered. If it's not vibranium, it's adamantium or palladium, whatever you want to call it. So I just think that's really funny how there's always a better metal or stronger thing that exists as we go around. At this time, it was palladium was the strongest metal we had before we understand vibranium or adamantium. I believe we're at adamantium right now. We went through vibranium being the strongest thing on the earth. Then it's like now we have adamantium being introduced in Eternals through the I forgot what they're called. Those big they're not robots. Those big creature planet people, CPP. Eternals. What are those things called? Somebody tell me what they're called. I should know. I'm not going to look it up. They use the limited forge facilities available to them and work meticulously. Stark and Yinsen secretly build a powerful electromagnetic generator called an arc reactor. If you know anything about arc reactors, that is what powers Tony. Tony had a large arc reactor back home powering his whole facility, and he has built a miniaturized version of it to power Stark's electromagnetic reactor that he's making. And then they begin to build a suit of armor to escape. The suit is a very basic design, heavy and bulky. It has rudimentary weapons, a flamethrower, and rocket thrusters at the base to launch the occupant into flight. With the arc reactor, it can be powered for about 15 minutes. If you actually track that part of the movie, it is longer than 15 minutes. It is about 16 minutes and 32 seconds. I know it's like a minute and 32 seconds over, but I'm just saying the synopsis says 15 minutes, but that scene is about 16 minutes. So somebody may need to change that. The Ten Rings attack the workshop when they discover what Stark is doing. Yinsen sacrifices himself to divert them while Stark's suit powers up. And here's where the whole Stark guilt arc begins. In this beginning moment, I believe this was a core memory for Stark. The first person to die around him, because I feel like Tony Stark kind of has this, as I said, this guilt thing that kind of starts from the first movie, and it kind of builds up into Avengers and an Endgame, and then all these movies. I feel like he's always feeling guilty, being the person that is the leader of just the Avengers and just the whole faction of heroes. And I even think it's funny when he obviously dies in Endgame. Pepper Potts walks up to him and strokes his cheek and says, "Tony, it's okay," to let him rest finally. Like, do not, like, whatever has happened, like, you saved the world, everything is fine, everybody's fine. And then she lets out this gut-wrenching, like, yell and cry. Like, whoever wrote that, Gwyneth Paltrow, great scene. Just her smiling in Tony's face, saying, "Tony, it's okay." Right before he dies, like, he can now die perfectly knowing that he has created this suit of armor. Ultron was not a mistake. It was a mistake. Yeah, Ultron was a mistake. We're not going to jump past that. But yeah, I like the fact that somebody wrote in Gwyneth Paltrow, allowing him to metaphorically lay to rest. Shout out Lamb of God. Lay to rest this idea of being this protector of the world. You can't do it by yourself. And you're not even a superhero. You're not even a god. You're the equivalent of Batman. You're just high-tech millionaire. That's it. And you could die. Like, you're not Thor. You're not Black Panther. Yeah. Moving on. The armored Stark battles his way out of the cave to find the dying Yinsen. Then an enraged Stark burns the terrorist munitions and flies away, only to crash in the desert, destroying the suit. Now, I find it funny how Tony was so far in the air and fell from, I believe, the same height maybe Rhodes fell from in Civil War, but he survived. I mean, Rhodes survived, but he was crippled. I'm trying to figure out, how did Tony survive in a suit that's way less high tech than Rhodes' suit that he gets in Civil War? But that's a question for another day. After being rescued by Rhodes, Stark returns home and announces that his company will no longer manufacture weapons. Did Obadiah Stane set up Howard Stark the same way he was potentially trying to set up Tony Stark at this part of the movie? Like, when he's trying to take over the company, did he force his way into taking the company from Howard Stark? I would actually love to know. Did he have something to do with the Starks being murdered? I would love to know. Did Obadiah Stane put a hit out on the Starks to take over the company? These are questions. These are questions. I have questions. Obadiah Stane, his father's old partner and the company's manager, advises Stark that his suit may ruin Stark Industries and his father's legacy. Tony reveals to Stane that he has built a new miniaturized arc reactor. The reactor has the power to provide clean energy to the entire planet. In his home workshop, Stark builds an improved version of his suit. I think it's like gray, or like silver, as well as a more powerful arc reactor for his chest. Now, it's kind of crazy that he has something that powered his whole facility in his chest. It just seemed, I mean, obviously in Iron Man 2, having that amount of energy starts to like go into his bloodstream. But I'm just saying, that's a lot of energy and metal to have directly in your chest. His personal assistant, Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow, places the original reactor inside a small glass showcase. Though Stane requests details on his work, a suspicious Stark decides to work his... Though Stane requests details on his work, a suspicious Stark decides to keep his work to himself. Now, to go back to the reactor scene, when she's placing the reactor into his chest, that scene, if you watch it again, I believe Robert Downey Jr. is laying down, but there's like a rubberized version of his chest with the reactor. So if you watch that scene again, like Robert Downey Jr. is laying kind of like not flat, but at an angle, and he has a fake chest that she's reaching into to grab this muck or whatever that is inside his chest cavity. So watch that scene again, and it looks so weird because now you could tell that it's fake. Well, obviously it's fake, but the way they did it was actually pretty cool. At Stark's first public appearance after his return, reporter Christine Everett, otherwise known as 2000's Teen Choice Award winner Leslie Bibb, informs him that Stark Industries weapons, including the Jericho, were recently delivered to the Ten Rings and are being used to attack Yen Sin's home village. Now, I ain't gonna lie, that's kind of crazy that killing him wasn't enough. You had to go to his home village and take everybody out. Like, you kept this man in prison, working on whatever you had him working on, and it wasn't enough. Now you got to go to his home village and rip up his family. Crazy. So Stark learns that Stane is trying to replace him as the head of the company. Enraged, Stark dons his new armor, now it's red and gold, and flies to Afghanistan, where he saves Yen Sin's village and delivers a devastating blow to the Ten Rings. While flying home, Stark is shot at by two F-22 Raptor fighter jets. Now, I find that kind of crazy that this armor is that strong. Well, his Mark II armor is that strong that he could take and withstand the fire of a F-22 Raptor fighter jet. Yeah, interesting. He phones Rhodes and reveals his secret identity in an attempt to end the attack, which is a really funny scene with him being on the phone with Terrence Howard as he's in the air. Meanwhile, the Ten Rings gather the piece of Stark's prototype suit and meet with Stane, who subdues Raza and has the rest of the group eliminated. Stane has a new suit, reverse engineered from the wreckage. Yes, from the wreckage, brother. Every time I hear wreckage, I always think of that Bane. They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
If you know what I'm talking about. You know the scene I'm talking about. The fire rises, brother. They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. You know what I'm talking about. Don't make it seem like I'm a nerd. You've seen Bane. You've seen The Dark Knight Rises. Don't do that. Moving on. Seeking to find any other weapons delivered to the Ten Rings, Stark sends assistant Virginia Pepper Potts to hack into the company computer system from Stane's office. She discovers Stane has been supplying the terrorists and hired the Ten Rings to kill Stark, but the group reneged. Potts later meets with Agent Phil Coulson, casted as Clark Gregg, of the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division. You know what that stands for. SHIELD, a counterterrorism agency to inform him of Stane's activities. I also find that really funny that SHIELD was a counterterrorism agency. My thing was, were y'all just countering normal terrorism before the terrorism was linked to a blue beam in the sky, a man with infinity stones attached to a gauntlet? When did it switch from a dude at the airport with a mysterious package to, yo, that guy going through different universes is about to wipe the whole world away? Like, when, yeah, terrorism just amped up after a certain while. Stane's scientists cannot duplicate Stark's arc reactor, so Stane ambushes Stark at home using a sonic device to paralyze him and take his arc reactor. Left to die, Stark manages to crawl to his lab and plug in his original reactor. Potts and several SHIELD, Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, agents attempt to arrest Stane, but he dons his suit and attacks them. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that big suit attacking little people, type crazy. I'm not going to lie. Otherwise known as the Ironmonger suit, worn by Obadiah Stane, was approximately 9 feet 4 inches. Wow. 9 feet? That's way taller than Yao Ming. That's like yo. Listen, that's probably the size of Goliath from David and Goliath. That's wild. And he's just attacking normal people. That's not fair. Stark fights Stane, but is overmatched with his new arc reactor to run his suit at full capacity. Stark lures Stane atop the Stark Industries building and instructs Potts to overload the large arc reactor there. This unleashes a massive electrical surge that knocks Stane unconscious, causing him and his armor to fall into the exploding reactor, killing him. That's tough. The next day, the press has dubbed the armored hero Iron Man. Pretty funny, like I said. Black Sabbath song's called Iron Man. I would love to know how the two correlate. Which came first? Like, you know, did they read an Iron Man comic book and say, let's make a song about Iron Man? They were like, we are Iron Man. Agent Coulson gives Stark a cover story to explain the events of the night in Stane's death. At a press conference, Stark begins giving the cover story, but then announces that he is Iron Man, prompting the reporters to ask more questions. In a post-credits scene, SHIELD director Nick Fury, casted as Samuel L. Jackson, visits Stark at his home and noting that Iron Man is not the only superhero in the world and says he wants to discuss the Avengers Initiative. Yeah, if you know anything about the Avengers, I personally believe that Iron Man is the actual leader of the Avengers. I will explain eventually. Now, this film, that was in 2008, Iron Man, had a production budget of $140 million and a worldwide box office gross of approximately $585 million, which means that they made $445 million off of their box office. So they took their $140 million budget and made $445 from ticket sales. So shout out to them. They obviously had a positive increase, and we're gonna have some movies that the budget that they spent is less than what they made. And this is why I think it's really important to include this, to see like how great is this movie and look at how much was spent on the budget and how much they made back, right? Because the goal is to obviously make probably triple, quadruple what you spend on producing the movie. Now, these are some Marvel moments you might have missed. Who knew Leonardo DiCaprio was part of the casting lineup to play Tony Stark? Tom Cruise was the main one. Everybody says that. He's probably going to be in not Endgame, Doomsday. I don't think so. I didn't know that. I thought he was going to be in Doctor Strange, the multiverse movie. I thought Tom Cruise was going to be there as Superior Iron Man. Hugh Jackman, which is wild. Could you imagine Hugh Jackman playing Iron Man instead of Wolverine? That's crazy. Clive Owen. Clive Owen? I can't really see that. Unless it's like a dark Iron Man. And Nicolas Cage. That's crazy. So you mean to tell me Nicolas Cage was supposed to play Superman and Tony Stark? Make it make sense. Now, like I said, this movie basically invented the post-credit scene craze of everybody waiting past the credits and seeing what's the first post-credit and the second post-credit. This was the first one, and this kicked off phase 1 and set up the Avengers, obviously. I remember seeing Avengers. We'll get there, and I'll explain when I saw the Avengers. We're not there yet. You got to go to the 4th or 5th episode of this podcast. This is episode 1. Fun fact about Paul Bettany. He has never seen the film and is unfamiliar with the plot. He said J.A.R.V.I.S. was the easiest job ever. And it was almost like a robbery since he only worked for 2 hours, got paid a lot of money, then went on vacation with his wife, Jennifer Connelly, who would later voice the AI in Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017. And she's kind of like Irish. It's funny, he's British, she's kind of Irish or like Scottish with her accent. His role would, however, be expanded considerably in the later Marvel films and even require his physical presence in Avengers Age of Ultron, one of my favorite movies. And he gets to play Vision, who is the physical adaptation of J.A.R.V.I.S. Jarvis. The script was not completely finished when filming began. Another fun fact, the script was not completely finished when filming began. Since the filmmakers were more focused on the story and the action, so the dialogue was mostly ad-lib throughout the film, which is crazy. Director Jon Favreau acknowledged this made the film feel more natural. For example, Tony's monologue while he demonstrates the Jericho missile in the desert to the troops in the beginning of the movie was conceived on the spot. Robert Downey Jr. isn't just wearing sunglasses for protection from the bright sun, but also to hide the fact that he's reading his lines off of cue cards, which is wild. And that's probably why it comes so natural, is because he's like naturally impromptu reading it off of the paper. Some scenes were shot with 2 cameras to capture lines improvised on the spot. Downey would ask for many takes of one scene since he wanted to try something new. Gwyneth Paltrow, on the other hand, had a difficult time trying to match Downey with a suitable line as she never knew what he would say, which makes sense why Pepper Potts in those scenes really seems like she's like a bit taken off, like she's nervous, which I think that I actually like Pepper Potts as a character. Final thoughts in my rating. Yes, like I said, I'll be rating each movie. What worked for me was Iron Man still holds up because it's character driven. And Favreau makes Tony Stark a likable a-hole, as he said when talking about directing this movie. Another thing that worked was Gwyneth Paltrow is the annoying, naggy mom/girlfriend we actually fall in love with and grow to appreciate. Because all the awkwardness that she has and all the annoyingness, but love that she has, it builds this character arc and connection between Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow, or Iron Man and Pepper Potts, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, where you kind of don't really see them becoming a thing, but you see like they're kind of meant for each other. Going from assistant to wife, essentially, which is pretty cool. What didn't work for me, I didn't like how dark that scene was. At a time where terrorism is happening, I believe there was a real terrorist fear that was happening in America with the weapons of mass destruction, all that other stuff. And yeah, that didn't, I mean, great movie, but I just think that felt a little too close to home. You know, like him being kidnapped and him being on television and them having like AK-47s and them basically saying like, give us money or we will kill him. That was real stuff that was happening. Like they were actually capturing soldiers and holding them hostage. But hey, do what you gotta do. My favorite scene or line from the movie was when Rhodes says next time, when he's about to get when Tony tells him to get the other suit. the War Machine suit, the all silver one, towards the end of the movie when they're battling, which would really help at the time. But he basically says, next time. I can't really do a good accent, but he was like, next time. And then in the next movie, he's a whole other black guy. He's Don Cheadle. I mean, he actually becomes War Machine in that movie, so he held up on some end of the bargain. But hey, you were Terrence Howard, now you're Don Cheadle. We're not going to talk about that? Whatever. I rank this movie 8.5 out of 10 Infinity Stones. Yes, I rank these movies in Infinity Stones. Now, are there 6 Infinity Stones to pull from? No. But guess what? As I said, it's episode 1 of my series,
Countdown to Doomsday.
Next time, we're heading to Brazil with The Incredible Hulk, which also came out in 2008. So get your bottles of Pingo Doce ready. If you know what that is, you're a real one. If you don't, go do your research. Pingo space DOCE. Do some research before next week's episode. Please send in your rankings or hot takes. Like, do you think Iron Man is overrated? Do you think that Gwyneth Paltrow was a great actress in this movie? Whatever you think. Comment, like, give me something. Tell me how you feel. Yes, follow the podcast on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and any other podcast platform that you enjoy. And as always, I'll see you once more on next week's episode of
Countdown to Doomsday.